Yorùbá TV 247
ẹ bá wa dá sí i.
Ìpolówó ọjà tó kájí wọlé.
ẹ bá wa dá sí i.
Ọ̀rọ̀ lórí orílẹ̀-èdè Yorùbá gbogbogbò.
ẹ bá wa dá sí i.
Ẹ̀yin ará mi ẹ súnmọ́ bí ẹ jẹ́ ká jọ pín.
ẹ bá wa dá sí i.
Yorùbá TV 247 ẹ bá wa pín. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone in the globe. I have to, show my concern, on this issue that is going on about Ekpa in the court of Finland. I believe his people, IPOB, has masterminded the 3 or 4 people that they sent on sabotage to go and testify against Ekpa in the court of Finland. I want to thank God that the lawyer, the counsel of Ekpa, is a brilliant one. And Ekpa himself is a brilliant man who has circumvented all the menaces that his people, has brought against him. They never knew that Ekpa and Nnamdi Kanu are messiahs. They are messiahs to them. But I believe sooner or later they will understand what they have done, the wrong they have done. It is barbaric. It is outdated ideas. It's a savage custom for you to select few people to go and testify against your own blood. Is it because of political sabotage? Because of the position you are, mounting? For the riches you are gathering? That was why you want to do what? You want to sell your own blood. Those that did it in the past, they regret it. All of you that are involved in this, you also regret doing that. And that's all about that. So it concerns me. It's a serious concern that I have to speak about this at this period. Let's watch this film and see how it goes. And see all the comments therein. Let's watch.
Surprise, those guys traveled to that country to testify again. In this video, we shall be showcasing Simon's trial. Mind you, this is a continuation from yesterday's court hearing. We cannot fit all the details in one video, and that's why sometimes we have to make a part 1 and a part 2. Yes, we also use illustrative pictures and videos to buttress our point. Mind you, these are not the official videos or pictures coming out from the courtroom. Yes, we use generative pictures sometimes to give a clear illustration of the court settings. With all of that being said, let's continue. Yesterday's court hearing happens to be a very strange court hearing and a very surprising one. Why? Well, 3 members of the IPOB came to the court session yesterday to testify against Mr. Simon. The moment we saw that 3 members of the IPOB came to the court session, we first of all thought that these guys are there to probably testify in favor of Mr. Simon. But to our greatest surprise, those guys traveled to that country to testify against Simon. So in this video, we shall be disclosing and discussing every single thing that has happened or happened yesterday in the courtroom. Well, the court session kicked off by the prosecuting lawyer making a statement addressed to the presiding judge, informing him that he has brought up 3 witnesses from the IPOB movement. Well, let's go to the courtroom and see what the prosecuting lawyer had to say. He said, "Our Honor, members of the jury, I stand before you today with a significant development in the case against the defendant, Simon. As you know, Simon is charged with inciting violence, a serious offense with far-reaching consequences. We have presented evidence detailing his inflammatory rhetoric and his direct link to the subsequent unrest. However, today, we present something unexpected, something that will shed further light on the defendant's culpability. We have secured the testimony of a surprise witness, a person who was previously unknown to us and who was directly involved in the events leading up to the violence. This witness possesses first-hand knowledge of Simon's actions and also his intentions, knowledge that directly contradicts the defense claims. Their testimony will provide irrefutable evidence of Simon's direct involvement in the planning and orchestrating the violence, revealing a level of premeditation and malicious intent that was previously unknown to the court. As you can see, this is a statement coming from the prosecuting lawyer claiming that he has brought up individuals from the IPOB. At this point, Simon and his lawyer did not know who the prosecuting lawyer was about to bring up to testify against them. The presiding judge asked the prosecuting lawyer to give him more clarity about these very surprising testifiers he has brought up today. The prosecuting lawyer responded by saying, "Your Honor, I'm here to offer a brief clarification regarding the witnesses we have for you guys today. Your Honor, to be perfectly clear, the 3 witnesses we have called to testify today are all members of the IPOB group. This is the same group of which the defendant, Simon, is a known leader. Their testimony will provide crucial insight into the defendant's activities and motivations within the organization, and their first-hand accounts will directly address the charges against him. Their testimony will corroborate previously presented evidence and will offer a compelling narrative that directly supports the prosecution's case. We believe their testimony is relevant and essential to the understanding of this case." After hearing the speech from the prosecuting lawyer, Simon's lawyer knew the game that this lawyer was about to play. He had to step in and probably counter him or try to stop him from bringing in those witnesses and stopping them from making their testimonies in court. Simon's lawyer stood up and said, "Your Honor, I stand before you today to respectfully request the suspension of the testimony of the 3 witnesses presented by the prosecution. While we understand the prosecution's desire to present their case, we have serious concerns regarding the credibility and the reliability of these witnesses. Concerns which necessitate a thorough examination before their testimony proceeds further. Firstly, we believe there is a significant risk of undue influence and coercion exerted upon these witnesses due to their affiliation with the IPOB group and the defendant's alleged leadership within that group. Given the potential for intimidation and the high-stakes nature of this case, we believe it is imperative that the court take steps to ensure the integrity and voluntariness of their testimony." And like I said, this was a speech coming from Simon's lawyer where he told the courtroom and the presiding judge that he would want him to suspend these testifiers from making any comments in the courtroom. Yes, at this point in time, the judge and the courtroom needed more clarity, because how can an IPOB member, a group that has been proscribed by the federal government of Nigeria as a terror group, how can a member of that said group travel from Nigeria to Finland and testify against one of its own members? It doesn't make any form of sense. And this was the question Simon's lawyer was asking the presiding judge. He wanted the presiding judge to suspend the testimonies that will be coming from this IPOB member as well. The presiding judge responded by saying, "Good morning, counsel. I would like you to give me more clarity regarding the witnesses you have presented from the IPOB. Given that the IPOB is classified as a terrorist group in Nigeria, how is it that these members have been allowed to leave the country without being arrested?" And this question was addressed to the prosecuting lawyer. He responded by saying, "Good morning, Your Honor. Thank you for your question. It is important to clarify that the members of the IPOB who are testifying today left Nigeria prior to the group being officially proscribed as a terrorist group. At the time of their departure, they were not subject to any legal restrictions or charges related to terrorism." So as you can see, the prosecuting lawyer is saying that these guys, these IPOB individuals, left Nigeria before this group was proscribed as a terrorist group. So the presiding judge continued by saying, "I see, so you are indicating that their exit occurred before the designation of IPOB as a terrorist group. Can you provide any details on when this designation took place and how it affects the credibility of their testimonies?" The prosecuting lawyer responded by saying, "Certainly, Your Honor. The IPOB was designated as a terrorist group in September of 2017. The witnesses we have brought forth left Nigeria well before this designation, which means they were free to travel without any legal implications at that time. Their testimonies are based on their experiences and observations during that period. and we believe they will provide valuable insights into the defendant's actions and intentions. The presiding judge responded by saying, "Thank you for that clarification. It is crucial for the court to understand the timeline and the legal context surrounding these witnesses. I appreciate your thoughtfulness in addressing this concern." And the lawyer said, "Thank you, Your Honor. We are committed to ensuring that all evidence presented is both relevant and credible, and we believe these witnesses will significantly contribute to the case against the defendant." And the judge responded by saying, "Very well, let us proceed with the testimonies, keeping in mind the context you have provided. Thank you for your cooperation." Well, at this point, we felt like the judge did not ask the prosecuting lawyer important questions. He did not ask him the basics that he should have asked. And that is when Simon's lawyer stood up and told the presiding judge that he has some questions to ask the prosecuting lawyer before he will be allowed to bring in his first testifier from the IPOB. And the presiding judge gave him his permission and his green light. Well, so at this point, this is a conversation had between the prosecuting lawyer and Simon's lawyer, who happens to be the defendant's lawyer. So the prosecuting lawyer said, "Good morning, counsel. I appreciate your presence here today. I would like to clarify the relevance of the witnesses we have presented from the IPOB group." Simon's lawyer said, "Good morning. I must say, I'm struggling to understand your position regarding these witnesses. You are bringing in members of a group that has been designated as a terrorist organization. How can you justify their testimonies in this court?" The prosecuting lawyer said, "I understand your concerns, but it's important to note that these witnesses left Nigeria before the IPOB was officially classified as this particular group. Their testimonies are based on their experience prior to this designation." Simon's lawyer said, "That may be true, but I need to know, are these witnesses still members of the IPOB? If they are, their credibility is severely compromised. We cannot allow individuals affiliated with a terror organization to testify in this court." The prosecuting lawyer answered by saying, "Yes, they are still members of the IPOB, but their testimonies are crucial for understanding the context of the event surrounding the defendant. Their insights will provide a clearer picture for his actions and intentions." Simon's lawyer said, "But that's precisely the issue. If they are still active members of a group that is considered a terror group, how can we trust their accounts? Their loyalty to IPOB could bias their testimonies. This is a matter of national security and justice." And the prosecuting lawyer responded by saying, "I appreciate your passion for justice, but we must also consider the right to a fair trial. These witnesses are providing first-hand accounts that are relevant to this case. Their perspectives are essential for the court to understand the dynamics at play." Simon's lawyer continued by saying, "Fair trial or not, we cannot overlook the implications of allowing members of a terrorist group to testify. Their involvement raises questions about coercion, influence, and integrity of their statements. We need to ensure that the court is not misled by potentially biased testimonies." The prosecuting lawyer responded by saying, "I understand your point, but we have to weigh in the value of their testimonies against the potential biases. The court must evaluate the evidence presented and determine its credibility. We believe their insights will help clarify the situation surrounding Simon." And Simon's lawyer said, "But how can we be sure that their testimonies are not just a reflection of a group's agenda? If they are still active members, their motivations could be influenced by the loyalty at the IPOB rather than a commitment to the truth." The prosecuting lawyer answered by saying, "That's a valid concern, and I assure you that we'll be addressing it during the cross-examination. The defense will have the opportunity to challenge their credibility and motives. The court will ultimately decide how much weight to give their testimonies." And Simon's lawyer continued by saying, "I appreciate that, but I still believe we should consider suspending their testimonies until we can verify their current status and motivations. It's crucial for the integrity of this trial that we ensure all witnesses are impartial and credible." And the prosecuting lawyer said, "I see your point, but I urge you to consider the implications of delaying their testimonies. We have a responsibility to present the evidence we believe is relevant to the case. A suspension could hinder the prosecution's ability to present a complete narrative." And Simon's lawyer said, "I understand your position, but the integrity of the judicial process must come first. If we allow these witnesses to testify without addressing their affiliations and potential biases, we risk undermining the entire trial. Justice must prevail over expediency.
Alright guys, in this video I'm going to show you how you can start your dropshipping business in just 7 days. Yes, 7 days. This is not a joke, okay? So I know there are other videos out there that speak about the same thing. Yes, I know. And sometimes they take time, but sometimes it is quite fast as well, okay? So in this very video, I am going to show you how to do what I have been doing for just 7 days. And on these 7 days, what's just going to happen? You have an online store, your product will be up there live, and you can receive sales from any part of the world. Now, before I go into that, let me just give you a brief summary of what dropshipping is. Dropshipping is simply you selling products you don't keep inventory of. For example, have you ever thought of selling something you've never seen? It's crazy, right? Yeah, but it's true. Now, this is how it works. You need to have an online store. When you are done having an online store, you have to integrate it with the manufacturer. So once the integration is done, it is easy for you to, with just one knob, pressing of knobs, it's easy for you to move products from your manufacturer shop to your store for free. You don't pay. Okay, so for this reason, I am going to be doing more. I've done more videos that explain deep what dropshipping is all about.
Justice must prevail over expediency. The prosecuting lawyer said, I respect your commitment to justice and I agree that we must ensure the integrity of the process. Perhaps we can agree to allow the testimonies to proceed with the understanding that their credibility will be thoroughly examined during cross-examination. The defendant lawyer said, that sounds reasonable. I would hold you to that. The courts must be vigilant in assessing the reliability of these witnesses. We cannot afford to compromise the truth in the pursuit of a narrative. And the prosecuting lawyer responded by saying, absolutely, we are both here to seek the truth and I appreciate your willingness to engage in this dialogue. Let's ensure that the court receives all necessary information to make an informed decision. Simon's lawyer responded by saying, agreed. Let's proceed with caution and ensure that the justice is served. Thank you for the discussion. And the prosecuting lawyer said, thank you, counsel. I look forward to a fair and thorough examination of the evidence. Well, as you can see, Simon's lawyer was very smooth and calm with his words and manner of approach. It's now left for the judge to give a verdict if the witnesses should be brought in or not. Because like I said, these guys are from the IPOB. So the lawyer came in and made a very straight statement. He said, and I quote, having carefully considered the arguments presented by both the prosecution and the defense regarding the admissibility of the IPOB witnesses, I have reached a decision. The court recognizes the concerns raised by the defense regarding the witness affiliations and potential biases. We acknowledge the IPOB is a designated group and the potential for compromised credibility is valid concern. However, the court also recognizes the prosecution's assertion that these witnesses possesses potential relevant and material information regarding the defendant's actions and intentions. The right of the prosecution to present its case and the defendant's right to a fair trial both require that all relevant evidence be considered, provided it is presented in a manner that allows for proper scrutiny. Therefore, the courts will allow the IPOB witnesses to testify. However, this permission comes with specific conditions. As you can clearly see and hear, the presiding judge has allowed the IPOB testifiers to come in and give their testimonies. Well, the prosecuting lawyer called upon the very first witness from the IPOB to take the stance. The first witness took to the stand to give a full account of what he knows about Simon. So the very first witness took to the stand to give an account of Simon. He stated, and I quote, my name is, he states his name, and I'm here today to testify about the defendant Simon. I've been a member of the IPOB for many years and have first-hand knowledge of Simon's activities within the group. Simon is not just a member of the IPOB, he is the Prime Minister, holding positions of significant power and influence. He is deeply involved in the group's operations and decision-making processes. He is the one who gives orders. Simon has established a sophisticated network for disseminating information and assigning tasks to the IPOB members worldwide. This network uses encrypted communication channels and various online platforms to maintain secrecy and efficiency. He uses this network to coordinate actions, spread propaganda, and incite violence. I have personally witnessed Simon using this network to orchestrate various actions that have caused significant unrest and insecurity in Nigeria. He is directly responsible for the widespread violence and disruptions. His orders lead to attacks, protests, and general chaos. One of the most notable examples is the sit-at-home orders he frequently issues. These orders force businesses to close, schools to remain empty, and people to stay indoors, disrupting daily life and crippling the economy. This has created a climate of fear and uncertainty across the region, significantly impacting the lives of ordinary citizens. Simon's actions have directly led to insecurity and instability in Nigeria. His influence and control over the IPOB network have caused immense sufferings and damages. I can testify that his orders have resulted in loss of life and property and widespread social and economic disruptions. His actions are a clear and present danger to the peace and stability of Nigeria. I believe his actions are criminal and should be punished accordingly. Simon claims he is not the leader of the IPOB, that he has no control. This is a blatant lie. I have witnessed firsthand Simon's leadership, his influence, and his absolute authority within the organization. He is without question our leader. He is the one who guides us. He is the one who makes the decisions. He is the one who gives orders. He is the one who sets the direction for our movement. To deny this is to deny the very fabric of the IPOB. I have seen Simon's dedication to the cause, his unwavering commitment to our goals, and the tireless efforts to advance our cause. He is the heart and the soul of our struggle. His actions in court are betrayal of everything we stand for. He is trying to distance himself from the very people he has led, the very cause he has championed. He is attempting to save himself at the expense of our movement and truth. I am here to tell you that Simon is our leader. He is the one who guides us. He is the one who makes the decisions. He is the one who gives the orders. He is the one who sets the direction for our movement. To deny this is to deny the very fabric of the IPOB. My name and the witness state his name, and I'm here to tell you the truth about Simon. I've been a member of the IPOB for years now, and I know Simon well. I've heard the testimonies in court, and I'm here to say that he's lying. He also continued by saying, Simon says he's not our leader. That's a load of rubbish. He's the prime minister. For crying out loud, he's the one calling the shots. He's the one giving orders. He's the one setting the agenda. Well, to summarize every single thing this witness came in to say, he's trying to pinpoint that Simon is the leader of the IPOB, that he's the leader, he's the one who gave out instructions and all of those good stuffs. After hearing all of these testimonies and statements coming from this man, the prosecuting lawyer asked the judge to grant him the permission to cross-examine the witness, and the judge gave his full permission. So now the prosecuting lawyer wants to cross-examine his witness, a member of the IPOB. And here's the conversation between the prosecuting lawyer and the witness. The prosecuting lawyer started by saying, "Good morning. Thank you for being here today. I would like to ask you a few questions regarding your testimony about Simon and his role in the IPOB." The witness responded by saying, "Good morning. I'm ready to answer your questions." The lawyer said, "You stated that Simon is the prime minister of the IPOB and that he has significant influence with the organization. Can you clarify how you came to know this information?" The witness said, "I have been a member of the IPOB for a number of years now, and I've seen Simon in action. He's the one who gives orders and makes decisions for the group." The lawyer said, "So you are saying that you have direct knowledge of his authority. Can you provide specific examples of orders he has given that you've witnessed firsthand?" The witness responded by saying, "Yes, I've seen him issue directives through our communication network. For instance, he has called for a sit-at-home orders, which forced people to stay indoors and disrupted daily life." The lawyer said, "You mentioned the sit-at-home orders. Were these orders followed by all members of IPOB, or were there dissenting voices within the group?" The witness said, "Most members followed the orders because Simon is respected and seen as the leader. However, there were some who disregard but felt pressure to comply." The lawyer said, "Interesting. He also claimed that Simon's actions have caused unrest and insecurity in Nigeria. Can you provide evidence or specific incidents that demonstrate this unrest?" The witness replied by saying, "Yes, there have been protests and violence that I believe were incited by Simon's directives. For example, after he called for a protest against the government, there were clashes between the members and the residents of the Southeast and the security forces from Nigeria." The prosecuting lawyer responded by saying, "So you are attributing the unrest directly to Simon's orders. But isn't it possible that other factors contributed to this incident, such as government actions or public sentiment?" The witness answered, while there are many factors, Simon's influence and timing of these orders played a significant role in escalating tensions. The prosecuting lawyer responded by saying, you mentioned that Simon is a leader of the IPOB. Are you aware of any other individuals within the organization who hold leadership positions or have influence? The witness responded by saying, yes, there are other leadership, but Simon is the most prominent and has the most authority in decision making. The lawyer said, would you say that your loyalty to Simon and the IPOB might affect your perspective on these actions? The witness answered, I'm loyal to the cause, but I'm also here to tell the truth about Simon's role and actions. The lawyer said, thank you for your honesty. One last question. If Simon were to deny his leadership role in IPOB, how would you respond to that? The witness said, I would say he's lying. I have seen him lead and make decisions. He cannot distance himself from the truth of his position. The lawyer said, thank you. No further questions at this time. And the witness responded by saying, thank you very much. Well, and now, Simon for the very first time asked the judge for permission to speak. Yes, and the judge granted his request. Simon said first thing first that he would want to address the witness who claims that he, Simon, is the leader of the IPOB. And the presiding judge said, feel free to speak. Simon started by saying, Your Honor, I stand before you today to respectfully request permission to cross-examine the witness who just testified. The testimony provided by this individual contains several inaccuracies and misrepresentation that are crucial to address for the sake of the truth and justice. This witness has made serious allegations. Session started by the prosecuting lawyer making an introductory speech. So let's take a listen to what the prosecuting lawyer had to say in the courtroom today. He stated, and I quote, Your Honor, today we are here to show that Simon illegally bought weapons. We have a witness codenamed T5 who is all the way from Nigeria. T5 will testify that Simon sent money to him to buy guns. We have bank statements and other evidence to prove this. This is a serious offense because it's illegal to buy weapons like this, and it's dangerous. Think of it like this. Simon ordered guns online, but instead of a package arriving at his door, the guns were bought by our witness in Nigeria using money Simon sent. We have the receipt to speak, showing that transaction. It's a clear case of illegal weapons purchases. We are confident that the evidence will present, including T5's testimony and financial records, will clearly demonstrate Simon's guilt. This isn't just about breaking the law, it's about public safety. We are ready to proceed when you are. So as you can see, this is statements coming from the prosecuting lawyer claiming that Simon purchased or ordered for weapons to be sent to the southeastern region of Nigeria. But instead of these weapons getting to the specific address, an individual, a close friend of Simon, intercepted these weapons. He bought them and he followed suit to do the unimaginable. So let's go back to the courtroom and see the cross-examination between the prosecuting lawyer and this individual, this witness known as T5, who claims to intercept the weapon sent by Mr. Simon. So let's see the conversation between these two parties. So the prosecuting lawyer called upon T5 to take the stance. T5 came into the stance and did all necessary rights needed to do as a witness. So the prosecuting lawyer started his questions by saying, Good morning, T5. Thank you for being here today. Can you please state your name for the record? T5 replied by stating his name. The prosecuting lawyer continued by saying, T5, you have testified that you received money from the defendant, known as Simon. Can you tell us how that money was sent to you? T5 replied by saying, yes, the money came through several wire transfers. I received the money in my bank account. The prosecuting lawyer continued to say, and did Simon tell you what the money was for? T5 replied, yes, he did. He told me the money was to purchase certain items. The prosecuting lawyer asked, and what items were you instructed to purchase? Firearms, weapons. The prosecuting lawyer claimed, can you describe the specific weapons you were instructed to purchase? T5 gives clear confirmation of the weapons he was asked to purchase by Mr. Simon. The prosecuting lawyer continued by saying, now, let's talk about how you were able to intercept these weapons. Can you explain what happened after you received the money and purchased the weapons? T5 replied by saying, after I received the money, I purchased the weapons. The prosecuting lawyer said, and then what happened? What happened next? T5 said, and then I contacted the authorities. The prosecuting lawyer continued by saying, and why did you contact the authorities? T5 said, because I realized what was happening was wrong. I knew it was illegal and I couldn't let this happen. The prosecuting lawyer said, so you never delivered these weapons to Simon's men? T5 replied, no, I contacted the authorities immediately after the purchase. The lawyer continued by saying, so you are the reason the weapons never reached Simon's men, is that correct? T5 said, yes, that is absolutely correct. The prosecuting lawyer continued by saying, T5, can you confirm that you have provided all necessary details to the authorities regarding Simon's transactions and the weapons purchased? T5 said, yes, I have provided all the details to the authorities. The prosecuting lawyer continued by saying, T5, you have stated that you received the money through wire transfers. Can you tell the court what information was on those transfers? T5 said, yes, the transfers included Simon's name and the amount of money and the date of transfer. The lawyer continued by saying, and did you have any contact with Simon after the purchase of these weapons? T5 said, yes, I had a brief communication with him. The prosecuting lawyer continued, and what was the nature of that communication? T5 said, I informed him that the purchase was complete and the items were ready for delivery. The prosecuting lawyer continued and said, and what was his response? T5 said, he seemed pleased. The lawyer continued by saying, thank you, T5. That's all for now. As you can see, this is a cross-examination between T5 and the prosecuting lawyer. But if you paid attention to this cross-examination, you notice that it doesn't make sense. You notice that there are a lot of mistakes and errors, which definitely is not adding up. And let's see if the judge will somehow, some way pinpoint these errors. Because from the very first glance, we notice that this statement coming from T5 and his lawyer isn't adding up. It doesn't make sense. So let's go back to the courtroom and see what followed suit. Back in the court session, T5 continued when the prosecuting lawyer said, okay, I'm done with your cross-examination. T5 continued by saying, I want to present documents. I want to present a series of documents to the courtroom to better buttress my point that Simon really sent money to me. So T5 continued by saying, Your Honor, members of the jury, I stand before you today not merely as a witness, but as a crucial link in unraveling a dangerous plot. I am here to present the financial records that undeniably prove that the defendant, Simon, paid me to purchase illegal weapons. These documents are not mere copies. They are the original records of the transactions, meticulously preserved to ensure the integrity of this case. T4 went on to bring out some documents, and he continued by saying, before you are bank statements, wire transfer confirmations, and digital payment receipts. Each document meticulously details the flow of funds from Simon's account to my own. These records clearly show a series of transactions, precisely timed and directly linked to the purchase of these weapons. The amounts match exactly the invoices I received from the arms dealer. The dates correspond perfectly to the timeline of the purchase, demonstrating a clear and direct connection between the money Simon sent and the weapons acquired. T5 also went a step further to also present all of his documents before the courtroom. He presented a series of bank statements, transactional records, and receipts. He claimed that Simon sent these monies to him. At this point, Simon wasn't looking very happy. He wasn't looking so convinced. From his facial expression, one can simply tell that Simon doesn't know T5 in any way, shape, or form, and that's what we think. So Simon asked the judge, permit me to speak, and Simon was granted the right. So let's go back to the courtroom and see what Simon had to say. I, Simon, respectfully request the opportunity to cross-examine the witness known as T5. It is my right to challenge the testimony presented against me, and I believe that the thorough examination of T5's statement is essential for ensuring a fair trial. I would like to address the following points during this cross-examination. And Simon went on to list 5 key points, 5 points he needs clarity from T5. He said the very first one here, the very first point I need more clarity on is the clarity of transactions. I intend to question T5 about the specifics of the financial transactions, including the exact amounts and dates of the wire transfers mentioned. The second point I will need clarity on is the intent and purpose. I wish to clarify the context in which the money was sent. It is crucial to understand whether T5 had any other intentions or agreements regarding the funds. And the third part is I will need clarity on the credibility of evidence. I will seek to challenge the authenticity of the documents presented by T5, including the bank statements and any other accompanying messages. And the fourth point here is I will need clarity on the communications with authorities. I want to explore T5's interactions with law enforcement and whether any pressure or influence was exerted on them to provide testimony against me. And the fifth point here is I will need clarity on the motivation for testimony. I aim to investigate T5's motivations for coming forward and whether there are any personal interests that may have influenced their testimony. I believe that addressing these points will provide clarity and context to the court regarding the allegations against me. Thank you, my Lord, for considering my request. And this, like I said, is a clear statement coming from Simon asking the judge to grant him permission to cross-examine T5, while using 5 key points as a basis of his questioning. Yes. The following conversations between T5 and Mr. Simon will be very, very interesting. So let's go back to the courtroom and see what follows suit afterwards. At this point, the presiding judge gave Simon the full permission to cross-examine the witness known as T5. So Simon asked, "Good morning, T5. Thank you for being here today. You've testified that I sent you money for the purchase of weapons. Is that correct?" T5 said, "Yes, that's correct." Simon continued by saying, "Let's talk about those transactions. You've presented bank statements. Can you confirm that the account numbers listed on those statements belong to you?" "Yes," replied T5. "They are my accounts." Simon continued and said, "And the name listed on these accounts, is that your full legal name?" "Yes, it is," replied T5. Simon continued by saying, "Now, regarding the purpose of these transactions, you claim it was for your weapons. Did you and I ever discuss other business ventures?" T5 continued by saying, "Yes, we did." Simon continued, "And were those other ventures discussed through the same channels as the financial transactions?" "Yes," replied T5. Simon said, "So, the method of communication and financial transfers were not exclusively for the purpose of purchasing weapons, is that right?" T5 continued by saying, "Yes, but the context is important." Simon continued by saying, "But the method of communication and the transfers were not exclusively for weapons, correct?" T5 said, "Yes, but..." Simon interrupted him and said, "You received money and you claimed that the money was for weapons. However, you also received money for other purposes, correct?" "Yes," replied T5, "but the messages clearly indicated the purpose." Simon continued by saying, "Let's examine those messages. You've mentioned that these messages were sent with the wire transfers. Are you certain the messages explicitly stated the purpose of weapons?" T5 looked through his document to probably get a response, but Simon continued by saying, "These documents you're showing states business investment, doesn't it? Does it mention weapons?" T5 replied by saying, "No, it doesn't showcase any form or any purpose that it was for the purchase of weapons." Simon continued by saying, "T5, you contacted the authorities after receiving this money, correct?" "Yes," replied T5. "Did you discuss this matter with anyone else before contacting with the authorities?" Simon asked. "Yes, I did," said T5. Simon continued by saying, "Did anyone advise you on what to say or how to present the information to the authorities?" T5 said no. Simon continued by saying, "And during those discussions, did you consider the potential consequences of your actions, including the possibility of legal repercussions?" T5 said, "No, I did not think about it." Said, "T5, you've stated that you purchased these weapons. Can you provide proof of this purchase?" "I have the invoices," replied T5. Simon said, "And were these invoices in your name?" "Yes, they were," replied T5. Simon asked, "And you have provided these invoices to the authorities?" "Yes." Simon continued by saying, "T5, you claimed you never delivered these weapons to my boys. Is that correct?" "Yes, that is correct. But you intend to deliver the weapons to my boys. Is that correct?" "Yes," replied T5. Simon said, "Thank you, T5. No further questions at this time." And Simon leaves the stand. If you paid attention to Simon's cross-examination, you will notice that he did not deny meeting with T5, but he's trying to make a point clear that the money that he sent is for a business deal. So let's go back to the courtroom and see the following conversations that played out after Simon cross-examined T5. So back to the courtroom. Before Simon left the stand, he made a very, very emotional speech that was addressed to the presiding judge. Simon stated, and I quote, "Members of the jury, I stand before you today not as a guilty man, but as a victim of a calculated and malicious frame-up. The charges against me are baseless, manufactured, and designed to deceive you. I categorically deny all accusations. This is not a case of illegal weapons purchases. It's a case of deliberate misrepresentation and the abuse of a broken system. The prosecution's star witness, T5, has presented a carefully constructed narrative, but I urge you to look beyond the surface and examine the evidence critically. The financial transactions presented are not evidence of my guilt. They are, in fact, evidence of a complex web of deceit and manipulation. The prosecution's attempt to link these transactions to purchase of illegal weapons is a blatant distortion of the truth. My business dealings with T5 were entirely legitimate, and any suggestion otherwise is a gross misrepresentation. I have never knowingly purchased illegal weapons. I have never knowingly sent illegal weapons to individuals in the southeastern region of Nigeria, and I will never engage in such activities. This case is a testament to the fallibility of the justice system and the ease with which a person can be falsely accused. I urge you to consider the inherent weaknesses in the prosecution's case, the lack of concrete evidence, and the questionable motives of the key witness. I am confident that a thorough examination of all the facts will lead you to one inescapable conclusion. I'm innocent, I'm a victim of conspiracy, and I trust in your judgment to see through this charade and deliver justice. I implore you to find me not guilty." Well, as you can see, this is a very, very emotional speech coming from Simon, addressed to the presiding judge. The presiding judge allowed him to present that speech in the courtroom today. And let's see what followed suit, and let's see other actions that played out after Simon rendered that emotional speech in court. After Simon was done with his speech, the judge continued by saying, "Okay, everyone, I've been listening to the evidence, and honestly, the main witness, T5, hasn't made a very strong case. The things they have said don't really connect very well, and it all feels a bit shaky. Is this really the best the prosecution can do? Because to be frank, it doesn't seem like they have much to back up their claims. If this is all you've got, then it looks like Mr. Simon might actually be innocent. I'm also a bit puzzled why they even brought this witness in. Their testimony hasn't really helped us understand what happened. I'm asking the prosecution why they brought this person in the first place." So as you can see, the judge did not buy up all of the statements and testimonies coming from testifier number 5. And the judge came out to clearly state that if this is what you have against Simon, it's very possible that Simon might be innocent. So let's see what the prosecuting lawyer had to say. Let's see his response to the judge, because the judge asked him a very clear question. If this is all you have to say or do against Mr. Simon, the defendant, let's see what this man, the prosecuting lawyer, have in his pocket. He said, "Your Honor, I appreciate your observations, but T5 testimony is supported by documented evidence reflecting a broader context of illegal activities, and their direct knowledge is crucial for establishing the timeline. We are prepared to present further evidence to reinforce their claims, and we are confident the jury will see the connections and implications." And the judge responded by saying, "I don't want to hear anything coming from this testifier known as T5. I think I've heard a lot from him. This guy don't have anything to present. His evidence doesn't add up. His words doesn't connect, and his claims are too baseless. And I can't sit here and listen to the nonsense coming from your testifier. Do you have somebody else you really want to present to the courtroom today? Do you have a better witness, a better testifier that has something to say, that has tangible things to say?" And the prosecutor lawyer said, "Yes, I have somebody else in my list of testifiers. Yes, I have somebody else, and this happens to be a vigilante officer from the southeastern region of Nigeria. This guy did not travel with T5. In fact, T5 and T6 traveled separately. So the testimonies coming from these two different witnesses are not rehearsed. The testimonies coming from T5 and T6 has no connection. That is to say, these guys haven't met each other before. they haven't had any conversations before. These are two different individuals from two different units in the southeastern region of Nigeria. So permit me to bring up my sixth testifier, known as T6, who, like I said, is a vigilante officer from the southeastern region of Nigeria. Presiding judge said, hope your testifier T6 knows what he's about to say. Hope this guy has been briefed on their stance in court. I don't want you to ever bring someone like T5 to the court moving forward. If ever you bring a witness that has a very weak statement, I will suspend you and your witnesses for making statements in the courtroom. I don't want you guys to come here and make up words, make up scenarios in your head. We are trying to seek justice, and we want justice to preside and prevail. And the prosecutor lawyer said, yes, I understand, and that is why I have somebody, a vigilante officer, who has a lot of things to say. He has a lot of evidence, facts, and data to back up all of his claims. And please, with your permission, permit me to bring up my sixth testifier. And the presiding judge nodded and said, okay, you have the green light. Bring up your testifier number 6 and let's see what he has to say and claim. T6 was brought into the stand. He did all necessary rights needed to be done as the testifier, and he was ready for cross-examination by the prosecuting lawyer. After T6 did all necessary rights needed to be done as a testifier, the prosecuting lawyer asked T6, officer, could you please state your full name and current occupation for the record? Mr. T6 gave his full name and also claimed that I am a vigilante officer in a specific region in the southeastern region of Nigeria. The prosecutor lawyer asked, officer, can you describe the situation in your region during the time or the period in which Simon's social media posts were active? T6 replied by saying the region was experiencing significant unrest. There were protests, clashes, and a general atmosphere of fear and instability. Many lives were lost, and the community was deeply affected. The prosecuting lawyer continued by saying, and did you personally observe or experience any of this unrest? T6 replied by saying, yes, I did. I was on the ground daily, working to maintain order and protect my community. The prosecuting lawyer said, now, officer, you mentioned Mr. Simon's social media post. Can you describe what you observed regarding this post? T6 said, I observed that Mr. Simon's post was widely shared and discussed within the community. They were filled with inflammatory languages like calls to action and often targeted specific groups of individuals. The prosecuting lawyer continued by saying, can you give us some specific examples of the languages used in this post? T6 provided all of the languages and the tones Mr. Simon used during his social media posts and videos. And the prosecuting lawyer continued by saying, did you see any evidence of Mr. Simon's post directly leading to any specific act of violence or unrest? T6 said, yes, I did. On several occasions, we saw protests and clashes that appeared to be directly inspired by Mr. Simon's post. The timing and the content of this post correlated closely with the outbreaks of violence. The prosecuting lawyer continued by asking, officer, what was the overall impact of Mr. Simon's social media activity on the community? T6 replied, the impact was devastating. His post fueled the unrest, spread misinformation, and incited fear. They contributed to the breakdown of order and led to significant suffering within the community. The prosecuting lawyer continued by saying, thank you, officer. No further questions at this point. At this point, Simon's lawyer for the very first time stood up and said, my lord, please permit me to cross-examine T6, a vigilante officer. Please permit me, give me the permission to ask him some specific questions. And the presiding judge gave his permission. So Simon's lawyer walked up to the stand and asked, T6, officer, good morning. You've stated you are a vigilante officer from a specific region in the southeastern region of Nigeria. Can you please describe the structure and official standing of your organization within the local government area and local governance? T6 answered, I am a member of a local security group that works with a community to maintain peace and safety. We are not officially sanctioned by the government in their formal sense, but we collaborate with local authorities and community leaders to address security concerns. Our primary focus is on preventing and responding to threats, ensuring the well-being of our community. The defense lawyer asked, "So, to be clear, you are not a sworn law enforcement officer, nor do you have the legal authority to arrest or detain individuals." T6 replied by saying, "That is correct. Our role is primarily focused on community safety and security. We work to identify and address potential threats and assist in maintaining order, but we do not have the same powers as official law enforcement agencies." Simon's lawyer asked, "Now, officer, you've testified regarding Mr. Simon's social media posts and their alleged impact. Did you personally witness Mr. Simon's creating this post, or are you basing your observations on their widespread dissemination?" T6 replied by saying, "I did not personally witness Mr. Simon creating this post. However, I observed their wide dissemination and the resulting impact on the community. The posts were shared extensively and their content was discussed openly in various local channels, including social media groups, local markets, and community gatherings. The origin of the post was generally known and attributed to Simon, your client." The defense lawyer stated, "You mentioned that Mr. Simon's post incited violence. Can you provide specific examples where Mr. Simon directly instructed individuals to commit acts of violence, or where you explicitly called for specific violent actions?"
The global AI market is projected to reach $1,770 billion by
For violence, or where you explicitly called for specific violent actions? Tixis answered, "While I cannot provide instances where Simon or Mr. Simon explicitly instructed individuals to commit violence, his posts contained inflammatory languages, calls to action that could be interpreted as inciting violence, and targeted specific groups and individuals with derogatory and provocative messages. For instance, he often used the language that demonized certain ethnic groups, called for protest against specific government policies, and shared misinformation that fueled animosity and unrest. These posts created an environment conducive to violence and unrest, even if they did not directly command specific violent acts." Simon's lawyer continued by saying, "Officer, did you conduct any formal analysis of social media algorithms or trends to determine the reach and impact of Mr. Simon's post? Did you investigate how widely these posts were shared, who was sharing them, and who was reacting to them?" T6 continued by saying, "No, I did not conduct a formal analysis of social media algorithms. My assessment of the impact was based on my observations within the community. I was on ground witnessing the reactions to this post, the discussions they generated, and the resulting increase in tension and unrest. The posts were widely shared and discussed, and their content was a prominent topic of conversation." Simon's lawyer continued by asking, "You stated that protests and clashes appeared to be directly inspired by Mr. Simon's post. Could it be that other factors such as an economic hardship, political grievances, and pre-existing tensions contributed to the unrest, and that Mr. Simon's posts were merely one element among many others?" T6 replied by saying, "I acknowledge that other factors contributed to the unrest. Economic hardship, political grievances, and pre-existing tensions undoubtedly played a role. However, the timing and the content of Mr. Simon's posts often coincided with outbreaks of violence and escalation of tensions. His posts amplified existing grievances, fueled misinformation, and incited further unrest. Why not the sole cause? They significantly exacerbated the situation and contributed to the escalation of violence." And Simon's lawyer and this guy known as T6 went on to have series of conversations and series of debates, questions and answers and whatsoever. But one thing we observed is that this man known as T6 cannot be a vigilante officer, because the kind of English he used in the courtroom, the kind of sentences he created, and his choice of languages and words cannot come from a local vigilante officer. This simply means that this man is not saying the truth, or the prosecuting lawyer is not telling the court the actual fact. We don't believe that a vigilante officer, a local vigilante officer that resides in the village, can speak this well in a courtroom, can defend himself, can defend his legal counsel team, and defend the case so well. So we highly doubt this man is a vigilante officer. At the same time, it feels like Mr. Simon was thinking the same thing. Simon felt like this guy cannot be a vigilante officer. This man cannot reside in a village. It's highly impossible. And that is why he asked the presiding judge that he would want to speak, he would want to say some certain things to the courtroom. And this will be the second time Simon is making remarks. So let's go back to the courtroom and see what Simon had to say and the speech he rendered. So Simon asked the judge, please permit me to speak up. I have some close observations about T6, this man who claims to be a vigilante officer. I have very, very strong instinct about this man's claims and assertions. I feel like T6 probably is lying. So let's see what Simon had to say when he got the permission from the judge. So Simon stood up and said, my lord, members of the jury, I stand before you today to vehemently refute the accusations leveled against me by the so-called witness, T6. His testimony is a fabrication and a malicious distortion of the truth designed to damage my reputation and wrongly implicate me in events I had no part in orchestrating. T6 claimed to be a vigilante officer, a little that lacks any verifiable authority or legitimacy. His testimony is unsubstantiated, lacking concrete evidence or verifiable facts. He claims many social media posts incited unrest, yet he fails to provide any specific examples of direct calls to violence or specific instructions for unlawful actions. His assertions are vague and generalized, relying on subjective interpretations of my post rather than objective evidence. The unrest in Southeast Nigeria is a complex issue with a deep-rooted causes, far beyond the reach of a few social media posts. To attribute the blame solely to me is a gross oversimplification and a dangerous distortion of reality. I maintain that my social media activity was solely focused on expressing my concerns about the political and social climate, and I have never intended to incite violence or unrest. I call upon the court to carefully scrutinize T6 testimony, to consider the lack of concrete evidence, and to recognize the inherent biases and potential motivations behind these accusations. I am confident that a thorough examination of the facts will reveal the falsity of his claims and clear my name of these unfounded charges. I have always been a voice of peace and justice in my community, and it's deeply saddening to be falsely accused of inciting violence. I urge you to consider the totality of the evidence and trust the justice to prevail. And these are the words coming from Mr. Simon himself.
Yorùbá TV 247. Ẹ bá wa dá sí. Ìpolówó ọjà tó kájí wọlé. Ẹ bá wa dá sí. Ọ̀rọ̀ lórí orílẹ̀-èdè Yorùbá gbogbogbò. Ẹ bá wa dá sí. Ẹ̀yin ará mi, ẹ súnmọ́ bí, ẹ jẹ́ ká jọ pín. Ẹ bá wa dá sí. Yorùbá TV 247. Ẹ bá wa pín.